Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Transformative Trauma Growth Coach Agape Garcia. Be Your Incredible Self, BYIS, best describes her tenacious attitude towards empowering others. Over the past 35 years, she has navigated through domestic violence, privacy, safety, vulnerability, and the mindset to endure personal adverse events in her life. Her survival of a double attempted homicide while 8 months pregnant by the father of her child, and the desperation to survive became the catalyst to the foundation of BYIS while achieving an undisputed outlook of independence. We get into her story and so much more. Enjoy.
It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. I've been looking forward to it.
Me too. So before we get into your life, a very interesting existence you've led. I'm curious, the last 3 years on planet Earth has been quite a thing. We've gone through a lot of different trials and tribulations with COVID. How did you survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you live your life and conduct business now?
Wow. Well, let's see. It has definitely impacted my life in a way of my own nervousness of I don't want to cough or sneeze out in public ever. It's like the worst thing to do. And I'm definitely conscious of when other people are coughing and sneezing in public. I hold my breath. I'm automatically looking for sanitizer for my hands. It's like the weirdest thing. I don't want to be afraid of germs. Germs is good bacteria to help you, fight off bad bacteria and viruses. It's supposed to build your immune system, and I feel like we're making our immune system weaker and weaker by being so freaking paranoid and wanting to sanitize our whole body head to toe every second of the day.
Amen. Thank you for saying that. I felt like that from the word go. I work in a school district by day, so we're almost like plumbers. We are exposed all the time, and if the human body, it's just like a vaccine or anything else, if the human body doesn't have things that are foreign introduced to overcome, what are we going to do? How are we going to defeat that? We're not going to. So, the interesting thing that I find with your life and with what you do with post-trauma, transformations is that the metaphor for you is that you're doing exactly what we're living right now. We're coming out of a pandemic that was traumatic on a lot of people. And it's almost as though you were built to be the conductor of this modern time right now, because all of us look at March and see levels of PTSD going through our brain because everything melted away 3 years ago. So I would imagine there has to be an uptick and a level of you that's really going after it now. Is that what's going on?
I would have to say you're on point, 100% spot on.
Let's get to the essence of your life and who you are and how you got to this point with helping people and giving of yourself. So let's go back in your life. Before we do go back into your life, I'm going to put you hypothetically in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And one of the kids looks up at you and asks, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Ooh, a third grader. What do I do for a living? I would say, well, I help people make sure that they're able to deal with their thoughts and understand when they're negative so they can intercept them.
So let's take you back to the third grade. What was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I would have to say my childhood was stripped from me, and I was already, I'm going to say it, I was already working at third grade. I didn't have dreams or aspirations as to what I wanted to be when I grew up because I had to focus on every day as it was. So let me put that into content for you. So basically I was abandoned by my mother when I was 2 years old. And then before I turned 3, my baby sister, my only sibling, passed away of cancer. So with my mother abandoning us at such a young age, and then us being with our father, and then him losing his baby, and then it would just left me as a 22-year-old man. He suffered such great loss behind his wife leaving him and his baby girl passing. He checked out. He was coping with his emotions in a way that had him completely removed from my life, meaning he worked third shift, partied, and slept all day. So that left me to fend for myself. I had to figure life out really quick.
Well, and that was the question I was getting to with your childhood. So it must have taken you, and it's probably hard because you're so close, because you are you. It must take an incredible amount of strength not only to be able to overcome that level of trauma, but to take that and have a positive life and have this motivation to help people. How do you think that came about? Because you could have done the same thing. You could have totally gotten into the same kind of lifestyle where it was all about you, but you made this into a more altruistic level of living your life.
Well, yeah, so obviously it took quite a bit of additional traumatic experiences in my life to really understand what PTG is. And, hardly anybody that I've ever talked to or that I've come across even knows or heard of PTG. And PTG is post-traumatic growth. And I would have to say that because of my abilities that were, I would say, naturally given as a child, to overcome and work through and kind of sort out that trauma, it just followed me with life or throughout life, and it came to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I really need to start bringing this to light, educating different people about it, and showing that there is a way without being diagnosed with a disorder or having to take, drugs to cope with it. And so I'll say that as a child, when I say it was like instinctive and natural, literally I found things to do after school. Like I was in every after school program. On my way home, I would either stop at the cemetery because it was closer than home and I would spend quality time with my deceased sister. Or I would go to the park and do gymnastics or wood shop or whatever the heck I felt like doing. And then I hung out with like neighbors or people in the neighborhood. So if they needed help with homework or, back to the job, right? So if they needed their car washed, if they needed their lawn mowed, if they needed, for me to help, watch a baby while they took a shower or wash dishes or was cooking dinner. Like I was constantly keeping myself so freaking busy that I didn't really settle in or face or deal with my emotions because I was so little. I didn't understand all of this, I had every void imaginable overnight as a little toddler, and then growing up, I just knew I had to figure out how to grow up. So in teenage years, plus I did not live in the best of neighborhoods. I lived in the neighborhood where if I wanted to go to school, I had to walk through a metal detector, okay? So what I didn't learn at home, you definitely learn on the street, like respect and watching your back and making sure that you don't get involved in what I call the novela, the soap operas. So it was always a matter of survival all my life. And I am textbook. I was involved in a very violent relationship as a teenager. Of course, that's also the environment that my mother left from and didn't take her kids out of. She just left herself. So, growing up in that, seeing that, being a recipient of that textbook style, that was my first relationship. Very volatile. And it was not until I had my first child as a teenager that I said, oh my gosh, I'm not going to repeat anything either one of my parents did. I'm not ever going to abandon my children, and I'm not ever going to be checked out. I will be a present provider for my kids. And once I had my daughter, I had to leave my relationship because it was abusive. And I, packed up my stuff, including my child's stuff. I didn't leave her behind, and we went about our business. And it was then that I went back to school for my GED because I was a high school dropout. And I was a high school dropout because you couldn't tell me anything. I already knew the neighborhood. I already had a work ethic. I already knew how to get around. I felt like an adult because I had no choice, right? I had no childhood pretty much. So when my daughter was born, like I said, I left that relationship. I went back to get my GED. I started going to college. And in my early 20s, I'll fast forward and say when my daughter was 8 years old, I'm already going for my bachelor's. I'm having, I have a good career. I moved to a place where it was outside of, the bad neighborhood, and it was right across the street from her school, right around the corner from my job. Even if my car broke down, nobody would miss a day. Like, I literally figured it out, and I had everything routined down to a T, okay? And all of a sudden, somebody else pops into my life, and I wasn't expecting it, and, you know, it got serious, and I was pregnant for the second time. And this time, it was obviously later in life, and he was offered a position across the United States of America, which he accepted, and he, you know, offered for me to make my own decision. Do you want to come or do you want to stay? And I was like, are you kidding? Of course I want to go. We're having a family. And so when I got to our destination, I was 7 months pregnant, and they were already, you know, there and acclimated. I needed time to stay back to, you know, pack up and put in my 2-week notice, wait for my kid to have spring break, and wait for my own semester to be over. And when I got to our new destination, it was all about settling in, making sure I, you know, knew the neighborhood, meet my doctors, etc. And then about 3 weeks later, our personal belongings arrived. So with such excitement to nest and get ready for the baby, I'm putting all this stuff away. And while I'm putting stuff away, I come across belongings of another woman. And my eyeballs popped out of my head. My heart is racing through my chest. I'm like, okay, did he have friends over? Did he have family over? He didn't tell me about anybody. Like, what the heck is all of this? And I'm, you know, it's bothering the crap out of me, as you can imagine. And I just kind of let the day go by, living in my thoughts, and waited until my, you know, daughter was asleep. And I said, hey, before we go to bed, we need to have a conversation. And I said, while I was putting stuff away, I came across, you know, the remnants of another female, and I would like to know, what is this from? Who's this? Whose stuff is this? And I was accused immediately of going through his belongings. He literally, that was his response to me. You were going through my stuff? And I said, no, you didn't hear me clearly. I said, while I was putting my stuff away, and before I could finish my sentence, he had already pinned me down to the floor. We were sitting on the couch, and he had pinned me down to the floor, sat on my pregnant 8-month belly with his child, and with his left hand, had his hand wrapped around my throat, with his right hand closed fist punching me over and over to my head. So I'm squirming. I don't even remember much of what happened up until my daughter said, Mom, from the top of the stairs. I never heard that scared voice come out of my child. And as soon as I heard that scared voice come out of my child, it rang through my ear so fast. And when it registered to my brain, all I did was say, that's my daughter! And I slammed my feet on the floor, and I thrusted my hips towards the ceiling, and he rolled over the top of me. I have no idea how I popped up on my feet. I just know that I ran around the couch, and by the time I ran around the couch, my daughter was taking the very last step off the bottom stair. I grabbed her little hand, and we ran out the door, just like that, barefoot, in pajamas, nothing on us. Running to the first neighbor that has their light on, pounding on their door. It's like 11 o'clock at night. Please, I need to use your phone. I call the cops. The cops are on their way. They probably got there in 15, 20 minutes, but it felt like 2 hours to me because I'm just sitting there bawling, having no idea, completely devastated. Did this just happen in a matter of 10 minutes? Is my life completely shattered right now in a matter of 10 minutes? I just left everything I know, every support system I have, every person that I am acquainted with or that I have a relationship, everything is left behind. I am out in this new foreign state with no one. So I didn't even know if I was going to be able to raise a baby or, you know, have the capacity to even wrap my head around. I didn't even know if my baby was okay. So it was the most devastating time and moment in my life. And, you know, when the cops got there and took pictures and had conversation with me, you know, it was really interesting, for lack of better words. how they said, this appears to be premeditated the way that he did this. Neither here nor there. I'm not, a criminologist. I didn't have anything to say about that. I just was listening, and I had my own stuff going on, so I really didn't comprehend what they were saying at the time. Needless to say, like I said, I was in a new place. I had no idea the laws or anything. I just stayed up all night crying and researching and seeing what, are my options. What can I do? What is there for me to do? I don't even know if this guy's going to get out tonight or tomorrow. Is he going to get bailed out? Is he going to stay in? It was just so much. And not to go into like minute by minute detail during that time frame, I'll just say that, when you are in a situation and it feels like your world is crumbling and you're completely devastated and you don't know what to do, it's really hard to divide your logic and your emotions, because when those two are confused and it's a battlefield it's a battle on the battlegrounds. It's a war on the battlefield. However, so I'm trying to say it here. When your mind and your heart are at war, it is the most confusing times possible to get through, especially when you're by yourself. If you don't have the means to seek help, if you are embarrassed or ashamed and you don't reach out to family and friends that love you and support you and would never judge you, but you're just convinced that you're embarrassed or ashamed and you just deal with it with yourself. That was my situation. I'm not going to lie. That's exactly where I was at. There was no way I was going to call family and friends and be like, oh my gosh, I know I just moved out here 3 weeks ago, but look, I just survived a double attempted homicide. Are you kidding me? There's no way. And plus, where I'm from, you made your bed, you lie in it. That was your choice. These are the consequences. Deal with it. Figure it out, And that's actually what I needed to, that's what I convinced myself. That's what I did, because that's what I felt, that's what I needed to do. And, I'll pause there so you can ask some questions.
That gives me a good idea. So as we move forward, what is it who's been a role model, or what's an inspiration for you in your modern life as we essentially look at you moving forward in your life? What motivates and moves you forward and to be successful?
Yeah, so that, two things, definitely music. Mary J. Blige is my favorite because she's been through so much and she has found her way. And, of course, I am a believer in my Creator, and I definitely believe that, we're not given more than we can handle. Everything is for a reason. No matter how terrible something is, we can find the good out of it, and it's up to us to decide what we want to do with it, because you can be bitter or you can be better. And you can move a million times, but you always live in your head. So if you don't have your mental space clean and in order, the rest is going to follow.
So if you were to have a dream tonight, run into like a 20-year-old version of yourself, you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on all of the things you've overcome, the wisdom you've gained through your life. What would you tell your young version?
I would tell my young version, listen to your instincts, because when you get older, you doubt them more than you ever did as a child. As a child, you just go with your instincts. As an adult, you challenge them, and you should not.
So, when you look at your life and trauma, do we ever get to a point where we are mostly healed, or is it just a lifelong? What's your philosophy on the lifelong process of overcoming things that we've gone through therapeutically? How do you view that for the human mind, especially yours?
So for me, personally speaking, it's all about finding something that makes sense of whatever the trauma was. So, for example, we'll use my mother. My mother abandoning at such a young age, yada, yada. And I say to myself, okay, she didn't have the tools or the equipment or the mental strength to think logically. She just was, I can't speak for her, just for from my own perspective, I just say she was weak, she left her kids behind, and she did what she needed to do for herself. What did that do for me? Well, it crushed me as a child. However, I was blessed with so many mothers. There were many women, mothers of my friends, that took me in, that fed me, that spoke to me like a mother, that treated me like a child, that accepted me like one of their own. So for me, I lost the one, but I gained 10 others. Okay? And then, for example, when I went through, the trauma with either one of my child's father, the end result was I have a beautiful child, and now I'm responsible for this beautiful child, and I get to raise my child however I want to, that I feel is best. And, there's so many other experiences that I had, but for me, it's all about what do I have that came out of that situation that I love, appreciate, honor, respect, and can carry on with. So post-traumatic growth is all about being a stronger, wiser individual. And again, that goes back to the logic. I really found a way. I really figured out how to set the emotions aside, or I don't want to say aside and ignore them. I deal with them fairly quickly because your emotions they follow your brain as well. It's all about how you control your psyche. Like, you are in control of your thoughts. You are in control of intercepting that negative inner critic. And once you learn how to do that, it's easier to navigate.
So in this life of achievement and overcoming, what are you the proudest of?
Raising my children to be mentally healthy, emotionally strong, and far from naive in this world.
So if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now and spend a little time with them, who would it be?
Mary J. Blige.
I thought so. I didn't want to be presumptuous, but I had a feeling. Everyone out there, they see you in a certain light. Your family, your friends, clients, colleagues, but ultimately you live your life. You're in control. What is your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
So I do struggle with that sometimes because I know that I am strong and have a purpose. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that I am of high value. So that is my perception of me. I am a high valued woman. I have morals, ethics, respect. I do what I feel is the right thing to do in the right situation. And it took a long time for me to get there.
So what has been one of the best client success stories you've ever had? Something that always puts a smile on your face?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't say that I have a specific one. I would just say that the common denominator from all of them is that they appreciate the way I coach and teach because it enables them to come up with the solutions that's best for them. They're not getting opinions. They're not getting, suggestions from any outside party. They're able to actually sort through and come up with things for themselves. And that is what makes them feel empowered and motivated.
That's wonderful. So if anyone out there listening wants to hire you, learn more about you, anything related to your world, where is the best place for them to go?
Oh my gosh, I'm on my second level of getting my certification as a high performance coach through Brendan Bouchard. They can reach me at beyouриncredibleself.com. Same thing it's all spelled correctly. And same thing on Instagram and Facebook, Be Your Incredible Self. You can reach me at beyourincredibleself@gmail.com.
Excellent. You are such an inspirational human being, and you definitely are transforming and changing the world in so many positive ways based on all of these things that you've overcome. So thank you for being raw and revealing and opening up about your world. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I love to teach about controlling your triggers. So that's my jam right there. Because after we go through trauma, we have triggers like nobody's business. And the moment you are able to control them, you are in your most highest form of self-control and self-empowerment in the day.
It's like an earthquake. After the earthquake, there's always tremors.
Yes, exactly.
For sure. Well, this has been wonderful. Hey, best of luck with everything. And again, thank you for opening up and giving me your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, coaching, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.